said that this would be a three-part message. This is actually going to be a four-part message. And so I want to get into part two of this message today. And I want us to go back to our lead passage over in 2 Timothy chapter 3. We're going to just read one verse today because we're just going to deal with verse 3 today. Amen. 2 Timothy chapter 3. We're talking about the last days. The last days. How many of you know we're living in the last days? Amen. We're living in the last days. And we're going to look at some behavior that's going to mark the truth that we're living in the last days, or mark the fact that we're living in the last days. Let's look at verse 3. The Bible says they will be unloving and unforgiving. They will slander others and have no self-control. They will be cruel and hate what is good. Today I want to talk from part 2 of the subject, a look into the last days. A look into the last days. Come on, say that with me. A look into the last days. Amen. When we get back into our text, once again, the Apostle Paul is speaking here, and as he is mentoring and pouring into his spiritual son Timothy in the ministry, shares with him a description of the condition and characteristics of man in the last days. In fact, in one translation, Paul calls these, it's the King James, I believe, Paul calls these days perilous times. Calls them perilous times. Most translations say difficult times. And he calls it perilous times because this word perilous, and the description will be on the screen, the word perilous, amen, simply means, amen, I promise you it's on the system, thank you. Perilous means troubled times, difficult times, stressful times, circumstances and situations. Difficult times, perilous. Somebody say perilous times. Perilous times. And this sort of atmosphere that Paul talks about with his son in the ministry, Timothy, marks what is known as the last days. And again, notice, y'all, that Paul doesn't talk specifically necessarily about difficult days in and of themselves as he does about difficult people. Did y'all see that in the text? He's not talking necessarily about difficult days. He's talking necessarily about difficult people. Because difficult people are going to make for difficult days. Did you hear what I said? Difficult people are going to make for difficult days. And now watch this. He starts verse 1 off. It's not going to be on the screen, but he starts it off. And he tells Timothy, and this is kind of my way of review. He tells Timothy, he tells him this. He says, he starts off by saying, and you should know this. Amen. You should know this. By telling him this, he's basically telling him, don't miss this. Be aware of this. It really, again, speaks of using discernment. Somebody say discernment. Because difficult times suggest that discernment matters. Let me say that again. Difficult times suggest that discernment matters. In fact, because you and I know that we are living in the last days and that these difficult days are prevalent, you and I are challenged to be discerning, to be alert, to be on guard, to be watchful, knowing that the return of Christ will soon happen.